Let's talk about Mashamba. And Mashamba is our conversation for the next 1 hour. We are joined by Advocate of the High Court, John Wambugu. John, good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation.
Thank you.
That's a hot seat of the Situation Room. First thing, prove to us that you're an advocate of the High Court with the recent happenings.
Active.
We don't just hear someone at you, I'm an advocate.
Advocate of the High
How do we know?
Yes, my number is 6304/06. My P105 number. So
Yeah, stroke 06.
yes.
Yeah, you've been in this for a while, eh?
Yes.
Admitted in 2006.
Yes. I've been at it for 17 years now. Yes.
And it's current.
Yes,
It's
current.
live.
Yes, it's
You've
live.
renewed. It's active.
Yes.
Sour.
Yes. And it has been for the last 17 years.
Since 06.
Yes, consistently.
Consistently.
Yes.
Okay. Sour. What do you focus on mostly in your practice?
I focus on commercial and conveyance law, basically land law. That's my main areas of focus, and as well as corporate governance, being a company secretary.
Okay.
Yes.
Sawa. City has the day's proverb. This week the proverbs are from Zanzibar. And so nakuja na Kiswahili cha Unguja.
Yes. Spice Islands is what they were called at some point or the other. And they were known for the very, very brisk trade in spices. Yes. Asifuye mvua imenyea.
Asifuye mvua imemnyea.
Yes.
John, you've heard this proverb before, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Yes.
Translate it to English.
Well, it is that he who praises or acknowledges something has probably had an interaction with it or has felt its impact in one way or another. Yes.
It is very well put.
Kabisa.
Extremely well put.
Kabisa?
Because the reference to rain, he who praises rain has been rained on.
Yes.
I'm talking about lived experience.
That is lived experience.
You've interacted with this. You're
know.
talking about something that you know
Full well.
very well. Okay. Many people right now would talk about things that they know very well, especially when it comes to land.
Yes.
There are others who are still now, with all things that are happening.
Yes.
Oh, Mavoko land, now there's the late Krema's land and other pieces of land. There are people who are sitting and they're just jittery and they're wondering, oh my goodness, so where do I stand when it comes to land? We've had these conversations many times. Oh, it's about due diligence. Oh, it's about you getting to know who you're dealing with, this and the other. But from your own casual reading of this, where's the problem?
I think first, as we interrogate this issue, we need to go back to history, because there has been a misconception or a concept that I have found rising up, and every time that these land issues come up, that I think need to be addressed once and for all, and with finality. This is basically having an updated national land policy, because the land in Kenya, as it were, we seem to take the approach that the titles given by the Queen or the colonial government are the ones that are most legitimate. And I have a serious question on that presupposition, because number one, the partition of Africa in 1884, the Berlin Conference, for lack of a better example, I can only equate it to an evening meeting of village robbers deciding which house each of them will raid in a village, or which home each of them will raid in a village. The Europeans had no land in Africa to partition or to come and issue titles on. That land belonged to our forefathers. But nevertheless, after that particular conference in 1885, the corporate raiders started the encroachment of Africa, beginning, and in our case it was the Imperial British East Africa Company in 1885 that started the way. And after acquiring a few chunks of land here and there and starting to extract some, raw materials, in 1895, the Queen told them, guys, now I'm going to pay you $250,000. And William Mackinnon, who was the founder, handed over whatever possessions he had acquired in British East Africa. And the British Protectorate was founded. Now, from that point, in around 1897, the first land administration ordinance was created by the Queen. And that act was the first. It was a precursor to what is called the Government Land Act. And that act is what allowed government to create leases of 99 years and basically license or lease land to primarily white settlers.
Wambugu, just pause.
Yes.
99.
Yes.
What about the 999?
Even the 999, it came around 19 after that. After that.
Okay. So the first one was a 99-year lease.
The first one was 99-year leases. But
Which
then
basically presupposes that first of all the king owns all the land.
yes,
And then now
it was Queen Victoria then.
the queen owns all the land.
Yes.
And just giving you lease
Yes.
to occupy it
Yes.
and to put it into productive use.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, the question there first that everybody has got to ask as an African, did the Queen have any land to issue titles to give?
Titles on.
Yes. Whose land were they giving out? Anyway, so as we speak, all the land basically that is in Kenya, if we were to follow that line of logic, can actually be challenged by the original owners, who would be basically our ancestors and the people who owned that land from the beginning. From the coast, there was the Griama all the way up to Lake Victoria. The land was actually taken over by conquest. And if you read history, after the British took over, there was a brutal campaign waged by a certain Colonel Richard Maynard Zagen, which basically removed people, or our forefathers, from their land. And that land was then given to the British. Most of them were soldiers who were coming from the First World War after 1918. And it was given to them. And that was basically how we have white settler farms that then were taken over by the government of Kenya upon independence by the government of Kenyatta I. And on the basis of what was called a willing buyer, willing seller, the British government gave money, a fund, which is used, the Land Settlement Fund, which was to the government of Kenya to buy land from white settlers who are willing to leave the country, and then distribute it
So
To
essentially,
the natives.
to the natives who had been dispossessed, whose fathers had been dispossessed.
so they gave us a loan
Yes,
to buy back our own land,
correct.
which had been taken from us.
Yes.
Loan. Was it
Yes.
a grant or was it a loan?
It was a loan, basically. It was a grant, it was interest free, but of course, people were supposed to pay for it. It was supposed to be an evolving fund that then enabled the government to settle all those who are landless or those who had been displaced.
So where are you taking us with this? Because you're taking us somewhere.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Now, where I'm taking you with this is this, that after that particular activity, we have been questioning titles that were issued subsequently by Kenyatta I and by President Moi on public land. Now, it's good for Kenyans to know that the major difference between the land that Kenyatta I gave or issued out, the titles that were issued by Kenyatta I and the titles that were issued by Moi, there's one major difference that people normally do not recognize. Kenyatta I was issuing titles on land that was being bought from British settlers. What happened, the challenges that came with that program, was that it was not equitable in the sense that preference was given to the elite. But the land already was titled. It belonged to British settlers. Kenyatta I did not give public land that belonged to the crown that he had inherited as a government of Kenya, for example, in form of government houses
Okay.
or land that belonged to public institutions.
Okay.
That was done by Moi
By MO1.
Yes, in 1980s and 1990s. And that is where now the problem arose. Because today, if you are to go back to that history and decide that you are going to repossess all public land issued by President Moi, there would be no upper hill. All those buildings would be flattened. That land used to belong to the East African Railways and Harbors, then later Kenya Railways. There would be no community because the East African community had titles to all the land in community, what is called community today. Any titles that have subsequently been issued by President Moi after the collapse of the East African community, it already has titles. In fact, there are many cases that today the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission is dealing with, trying to repossess those titles because the procedure was not followed in issuing new allotment to those titles. So it's good to understand the historical context because the national land policy that has subsequently come then was meant to address some of those issues. Now, after the Constitution of 2010, if you look at the mandate in Chapter 5 of the new Constitution, there are principles of the national land, what is called the national land policy, what's supposed to be the national land policy. Now, our National Land Commission is yet to upgrade the national land policy. The one that is still in use emanated from the Jonjo Land Commission of 1999. Towards the end of his tenure, MO1, or President Moi, formed a land commission led by Sir Charles Jonjo, or Honorable Charles Jonjo, that was meant to develop the principles of a national land policy. Now, the findings, the recommendations of the Jonjo Commission is what later informed the NAC government between 2000 and 2007 when they were coming up with the national economic strategy to basically implement it and come up with a national land policy that was approved by Parliament in 2009. If you look at the recommendation of that task force, the national land policy that was approved by Parliament in 2009, and what is now Chapter 5 of the Constitution on the principles of the national land policy, I think it's Article 60, it is almost word for word. Basically, it's the same principles that have flowed down. Now, but that policy has not been upgraded because there was a shift. Remember, before that Jonjo Commission made its recommendation, the principle of an innocent purchaser of land without notice, which now is what in law we call the torrent system, that if you bought land and you're an innocent purchaser, then your title, and the title you have been given is by the government. The government is a guarantor of that title. You should not be dispossessed under any circumstance, whether the title was legitimately acquired or illegitimately acquired. That was the common law position.
How do you identify an innocent purchaser?
The innocent purchaser was that, of course, that the land, you must have gone to the land was vacant, it was not occupied. The person who was selling the land to you had a title, and when you checked in the land registry, that title is in the land records.
Appeared genuine.
Or no, was actually in the land. The search that you got
was actually genuine.
Okay? That was the basic principle.
So how would you end up on the wrong side of the law then? If everything was genuine, then you are a genuine land purchaser. You're not an innocent land purchaser. You're just a genuine land purchaser.
Now, the challenge, that's why I'm saying now, the challenge that has come is that the Jonjo Commission, in the principles that they gave for the national land policy, changed the concept. They said that principle can only apply as long as the person bought the land was acquired legally, not illegally, and then the Constitution of 2010 introduced the word irregular.
Okay. So it has to be legal and regular acquisition by the seller.
No, the title itself from source. The title from source must have been legal and regular.
Okay.
Okay.
What then would constitute a legal title?
Now,
so that we can understand the illegality of
the title.
Yes.
Of the title. Okay. A legal title is number one, that the original title was issued by the government of Kenya, okay, and was in pursuance of a process of allotment or allocation that was in accordance with the law,
Okay.
in the law existing then. So, and that is the basis of what I started with when I talked about the colonialist. The basis of that legality was that it was the Crown Land Ordinance. Okay? Now, about regularity, that can be contested, because how did they get to a position where they could issue the titles? Okay? Now, here we are, we have a country where we are the ones who are now in charge of this country.
So we think.
Or so we think.
Yes.
Our leaders, we are the ones who elected them.
So we think.
So we think we are disputing the titles that they have. We should, in pursuit of the powers that they acquired from the Queen. And now we are questioning. It's like we are questioning ourselves. And we also have a government that is pursuing an aggressive public housing program. Okay?
On public land.
On public land, which again, and I am saying here, is actually a conversion of public land to private hands through irregular means. It's actually contrary to Section 62, Article 62 of the Constitution. Why? Because you take public land, you put apartments, you sell them
To individuals.
They form a management company, then you transfer the reversionary interest of the land to the management company. What have you done?
You've privatized the public
You have
land.
privatized the land without following due process.
What should be the due process?
The due process is, if the land is to be sold from a public organization, it should follow the Public Procurement and Disposal Act. Or,
Should advertise and call 3 bidders.
yes,
For each mortgage.
yes, for the people who are developing the land. Or, then have a public policy. And that is where I'm going back to the issue of having a national land policy that is effective and addresses the requirements of the Constitution, which is that land use should be equitable, it should be properly utilized, and it should, protect ecologically sensitive areas. It should be gender, it should not be gender discriminative. There are those principles.
Sure.
So,
Wakili, I'm trying to make a connection,
Yes.
because there's obviously one,
yes,
between these historical issues
yes,
and how land then was allocated, whether it be to government and then thereafter to individuals,
yes.
and connect it to what we see happening today. It's still, from what you're saying, it is not possible to separate this, because this land debacle in the country at the moment is deep, and
It's
it runs
very deep.
very, very deep.
Yes.
But from what I understand, that we cannot separate what happened historically
Yes.
with the issues that we are seeing today.
Correct.
So much so that when you say a genuine landowner and how they were given, because one thing you did mention here is allotment.
Yes.
That one of the issues that then lent to credibility or legitimacy of land ownership was allotment. But today we're being told you have an allotment letter, you might as well own, air.
Exactly.
So, what then is the connection between what happened historically and the mess that we are seeing today?
Yes.
Because we were told some high numbers of close to 90% of people who say they own land in this country, and the land actually does not belong to them because they've not gone through the proper process. So what are we saying, essentially?
Now, one of the issues, leasehold land, normally in Kenya, all urban areas is where you get leasehold land, and that's what is government land that used to be allocated previously prior to the 2010 Constitution, and even today is allocated. But now the land after the 2010 Constitution, the allocation powers are with the counties, because land, basically the counties are the trustees of the people, and the National Land Commission then is supposed to oversee or manage that process. Now, the challenge that has been there even before was that the process of land allocation from independence was through different channels. There was the district land allocation committees, which basically would then sit and look at land based on the plan, on the physical planning department of the county for the former districts, and they would have their own county development plan. That would then identify which land was industrial, which land was commercial, which land was residential, and so on and so forth. And then based on those plans, they would then draw up what are called the PDPs, the part development, the physical development plans, that would then be used to allocate a title. So based on that map, we say in this area we have so many plots. In Nairobi, for example, there used to be auctions in the 1980s, in Parklands, in Westlands, in many other places. And then you would be called, there was an auction like every Friday. And the rule, like in Nairobi, I have seen records that once you won one auction, you had to walk away.
So that you are only entitled to one?
Yes, to one.
Okay.
Once you won, you would walk away, and then you continue. But of course, there was still some,
There was ukora.
There was still some ukora. The prime titles or allotments would be at the bottom, so that most people take the ones in
They go, we go.
And I mean, there were all that was still there even back then. But basically, that was supposed to be there was supposed to be a public auction, more or less. That was the law. But now, what happened then in the 80s and 90s is that it became an issue of political
reward and
political reward and stuff. Again, I go back to my original thought. When the Queen was giving the land to the coming the British soldiers who had fought in the First World War, and they were retiring, I mean, when you look at what President Moi did, he was doing the same with his political soldiers and awarding them public land in almost similar fashion,
Not
so
almost.
only that those ones were not retiring.
Not almost. Identical.
Exactly. Yeah. So,
But a caveat here, if I may.
yes.
What enabled the president
Yes.
to achieve that particular goal, that's Moi,
Yes.
was the structural adjustment programs
Yes.
that the World Bank and the ilk issued. Remember that matter of the government?
Yes.
And property
Correct.
and owning,
Yes.
etc., etc.
Yes.
It opened the floodgates.
Correct.
Because prior to that,
Yes.
there was a modicum of control.
Yes.
Once,
Each entity owned its
yes, they
land.
did.
Yes,
They did.
they did.
But once they opened that,
Yes. And that is why even the government now institutions, you are very right. Actually, that's how the policy of telling Kenya Railways to surrender the land that you are not using, telling the other institutions surrender the land that you are not
Poster,
using.
who, yes.
Yes. That is how that policy now came about, and then opens the floodgates that the senior civil servants and politicians and who are occupying government houses were then told you can actually
Pay for it.
yes, it was allocated to them.
It was allocated to them basically in Kilimani, Kileleshwa, Upper Hill, the entire Upper Hill, community and so on. So, and this is countrywide. If you go to Kitale, you find the same thing. If you go to Nakuru, you'll find the same thing.
It's all over. Let's take a break.
It's all over.
27 minutes to 8. This morning we're hosting John Wambugu. He's an advocate of the High Court of Kenya and also a corporate governance expert. We are talking about land policy in the country, what we have, whether it's serving us, and whether it's leading to what we are seeing now in this country in terms of land ownership and such other cases. We'll be back shortly. Don't go away.
Spice.
We're talking about land policy, and John will say we need to update and upgrade our land policy.
Correct.
As we were coming up to the implementation, to voting for the new constitution, the conversation around the constitution had many pillars. Yes. There was a governance issue. There were issues on the social side of issues, but land was also a key conversation that was happening. And how we manage and govern our land, how we transfer land, was also being discussed in Bomas previously by the committee of experts in Naivasha. All the way into the constitution, there's an entire chapter that discusses land, that tells you how important land is. Yes. So one would expect that in the implementation of the constitution, among the things that was going to make sure that we're now implementing the constitution, establishing the National Land Commission and giving it power and oomph and all, would be looking at reviewing the policy and aligning it to the constitution and the realities of the day. Are you saying that has not happened?
To a good degree, I mean, that continues to happen in the sense of we have the improvements that are going on in terms of land management, for example, with the new assessor system and so on. It's a process that is geared towards ending land fraud, for example, the duplication of titles and so on and so forth. So that is one of the actually one of the pillars in the principles of land policy that are specified in under Article 5 of the Constitution, Chapter 5 of the Constitution. So, in some areas, it's happening, but also there was, if you remember, after the new Constitution came, there was this big fight between the National Land Commission and the minister. I think it was Ngilu, Honorable Ngilu that time.
It was.
And that, the momentum that would have been for the National Land Commission to fully implement its mandate, I think was largely missed by that fight. Because in terms of resources, the National Land Commission was not given the adequate resources to carry out its mandate fully. And the net result was that we lost a huge opportunity. For example, in addressing historical land injustice, that mandate had a specific timeline, which actually, unfortunately, expired, has already expired. Why? Because they did not have enough resources. So then there was the other issue of public land and compensation that somehow ended up with the National Land Commission, and it ended up creating a huge, furore and chances of corruption. And that is why you saw the former land commissioners being charged because of the compensation over the Standard Gauge Railway from Mombasa. So in a sense, we lost direction because we introduced things that, we focused on things that we should not have focused on.
They were diverted. Attention was diverted into, you know what, guys?
Yes.
You can sell land.
Yes. Correct.
And the commissioners swallowed the bait.
Exactly. But the reality is the current situation that we are seeing of people being dispossessed or, having their structures brought down because of setting up structures on, illegally acquired land is really a consequence of the government not being proactive in terms of creating solutions. If you remember, we had the case of Waitiki in Mombasa.
Yep.
What happened?
It was 1,000 acres as well.
Yes, it was 1,000 acres. There was a solution. Waitiki the valuation was done. There was negotiated with the government. The president, in fact, President Uhuru got involved personally. Eventually, Waitiki was paid an agreed amount.
What I didn't like about it is that we, the taxpayers, paid Waitiki.
Correct.
We always do.
Yeah,
We always do. And unfortunately, to clean up the land mess, the news that Kenyans have got to receive and accept is that it's going to be expensive for the taxpayer.
that we are going to be
Yes.
Yeah.
paying.
Yes. But they are innovative.
Eric, when the government pays, who's paying?
It's
Yes.
us.
When the government
I
pays,
do
it's
not
you who is
want
paying.
that.
Yes.
That's why I'm saying I had a problem with the Waitiki compensation issue.
Yes. And
Those who wanted to, Waitiki should have been allowed to sell to people who want to buy.
yeah, but think about
Anyway,
it. Yes.
It's okay, continue. Let's continue.
But think about it this way. Those people who have built there and have settled there are also Kenyans. The presumption we have is that they are also taxpayers.
That's true.
Thank you,
So let them
Mr.
buy.
Wambugu.
Let that taxpayer
Yes.
buy his land.
Yes.
These people in Movoko and the one was that the
Oh,
place,
no,
Jiru,
no.
they have bought their land. They are genuine Kenyans.
No. They are Kenyans, yes.
But they have not genuinely
But they have
bought
not
the land.
genuinely bought the land because whoever
Yes.
they paid for the share certificates, if it's 100,000, were thugs. So what the government should be doing is engaging the initial landowners.
So then I must come in and ask a question because you've just said they bought them knowing that they were entering into a legitimate process.
Yes.
Because for the majority of these folks who did, that was actually the case.
Yes.
They did not go to this. What did you call that person? They did
Waitiki.
not go to. No,
Waitiki.
they did not go to this agent and purchase this land, knowing that this person was a thug.
Okay, some did, but
Okay.
majority perhaps didn't.
Okay.
Yes.
So now this is the question that we're asking, that in that case where you've paid this individual, who should then come in? Number one, should there be any kind of compensatory mechanism to deal with then what we're seeing today? Because that is the problem here. If we are being given the statistics that almost 90% of the people who own land in this country have not done it through a proper process. So there are many things that are happening. You go do a search at Ivy House, the results of your search, they may show you one thing, but they actually are something else. Number two, the person who gives you your share certificate is actually some guy who deals in some back alley corner something somewhere. You're none the wiser because your money has already gone. Then you have this piece of land upon which you erect a building, and then 3 minutes later somebody's coming in the bulldozer and taking it down. Who then is supposed to step in to sort out that problem? And that's what we're dealing with today. Mavoko today, Njiro tomorrow, somewhere else the next day.
But Wambugu,
Yes.
what you say is true. Njiru land is private land.
Yes.
Portland,
Yes.
government has a say.
Yes.
Okay? Now, Waitiki land was invaded.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
So, in this particular case, the invaders, one could argue, are the people who are selling the land to these unsuspecting buyers.
Yes.
If that is the case.
Yes.
That was private land.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Waitiki.
Yes.
The government came in. Private land.
Yes.
This is land that the government has a say.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
We have a precedent.
Yes.
Is that not what you London friends say?
Yes.
Yes. So,
I think in a sense,
in layman terms,
yes, in layman terms,
I have a point.
You have a very strong point.
Yes.
And that is what I'm alluding to, that in terms of the solutions that we are giving for these issues, I think we need to be a bit more proactive, even from the lawmaking, in terms of addressing can some of those disputes be resolved. Because remember, this is an issue, a myriad of issues. One, there's the issue of law enforcement.
Yep.
How did these people invade the land? There was law enforcement. Like Portland is a government institution, literally, it's a government-controlled institution.
Yep.
East African Portland. How did they invade land? There are several police stations in that area. There is a district commissioner who was been
Over a period of time.
over a period of time.
Yep.
And why I'm saying, like, I just responded to Ndu that some of them actually knew they were buying land that
Yes.
did not belong to whoever is selling to them, is because already, if you remember, Governor Mutua had given a press conference some years
caveats.
back. There were caveats. EACC had put an entire billboard on Mombasa Road warning people about that land. So people still came, got their share certificates and started building. So, but then you have to look at it from a human angle. Now, we have an issue where we are building homes for the homeless, those who want to acquire land. I mean, who are to acquire places to live, houses. At the same time, we are making others homeless. Why don't we use the same approach? Because we have institutions that are meant to fund public housing. Just go and tell East African Portland, okay, this land, unless the government requires it for a specific purpose, because
it's a lot of land, chief.
yes, it's still East African Portland has a lot of land. I mean, it's tens of thousands of acres. So, and actually, a section of it they have already commenced the process of selling to the squatters. So, what was so different about this particular section? You might as well just have called them, told the guys, you are going to you have to take loans.
People are joking.
Give us some more money.
Yeah, give us some more money.
You
Pay East African
people
Portland
are
for their land.
joking. You are playing right to the hands of these thugs who started this process in the first place. This is the game they were gunning for. When they were telling people, shamba zie taito,
Nyumba.
enda uyenge nyumba.
Yes.
That's what they were gunning for. They were saying, if we are many,
Yes.
the government will be forced to come to the table.
Yes.
And negotiate with us.
Yes.
I have sold you people out of the 4,000 acres. I've sold 3,000 acres.
Yes.
I have 1,000 acres.
Yes.
I'll end up with 1,000 acres.
But
That's the whole game plan.
Yes.
And now, if we actually just play into that,
No, but
what
Eric,
is to
how you address
what
that?
is to stop
Yes.
the next thug from going to another piece of land somewhere and saying, this ADC land, we are going to do the exactly same thing.
But that has been done before, Eric.
Exactly.
Yes, but Eric, what you need to do.
Let's not sanctify Ukora and Wizi here by saying I know why. No.
No, we will not sanctify it, definitely. But what we are saying is, you see, the criminals, the people who have done that, don't, humor them or entertain them. It should be extremely punitive. Actually charge the people who actually defrauded people, seize their assets. The same way you deal with corruption. That is, I mean,
Bus.
yes.
So if you are telling me
Yes.
that we are going to get these people to pay for that land,
Yes.
I'm fine.
Yes.
But telling me that I am going to continue paying taxes so we can buy that land, no.
Correct.
I am not going to buy land
Yes.
for some thug who went into Portland 20 years ago.
Yes.
No. That's what I'm saying.
Essentially, that land, if it's government land, I'm also a shareholder.
Yes.
So that man has already robbed me of my land.
your land.
Then he now wants me
And
to
then I'm
pay
paying.
him so that
To rob him again. Yes, indeed. I mean, that's why, a national land policy, then establishes a framework of dealing with the issues, and we stop an ad hoc kind of approach. You can see already the issue of Waitiki brought certain expectations.
Yes.
And remember, Waitiki came from the coastland clashes. That is how the invasion
Yes.
initially
actually,
was done.
yes. It was 1,000 acres.
Yes.
The invasion had started in small bits.
Yeah.
Yes.
What then happened? You see, Likoni grew.
Yes.
And as it grew, it got more urbanized. Remember, a lot of that land was rural land.
Yes.
So development encroached it.
Yes.
The clashes were just the excuse for larger numbers of people to now
move in.
Yes, and they didn't just move in.
Yes.
There are people, specifically politicians,
Yes.
who actually nudged them,
to move in.
to actually do that.
Correct.
Yes.
With a whole game plan
Yes.
of
Yes.
grabbing that land.
Yes.
Using innocent people,
Yes.
neighborhoods,
Yes.
people who are poor, telling them, come here and occupy this piece of land.
Yes.
But there are areas you will not touch.
Yes.
That's the whole thing.
But there are also good, better examples. If you look at, for example, Mtwapa, the county government of Kilifi wanted to expand the town because they realized there were some private farmers, or landowners who are doing farming next to Mtwapa, so they needed to expand the town. The Kilifi county actually purchased the land and allowed Mtwapa to extend, subdivided and created leases.
There's an area in that region, well, it's not really Mtwapa,
Yes.
Utange, when you go through Kisauni,
Yes.
they were farmers. It's a little beyond Bamburi.
Yes.
People own huge tracts of land there.
Yes.
So it makes sense. You see, the moment you have an example where there's been a government intervention that benefited the Mwananchi,
Yes.
then you cannot say that nothing could have been done.
Yes, exactly.
Or the humane approach could not have been followed while not letting these guys go scot-free. This is one thing.
Exactly.
You don't let them get away with it.
Yes.
But these individuals,
Yes.
a humane approach to handling this matter is of paramount importance.
Yes.
You know, these aren't wealthy people who had money and they didn't know what to do with it. These are people who painstakingly, bit by bit by bit by bit by bit by bit, and these sellers were wise.
Yes.
They sell it to you on very easy terms, so you actually don't even feel the pressure.
Yes.
Yes, but now the pressure is there. All your money gone
Plus everything that you've put up
in
there.
the blink of an eye. Gone.
Some of the plots were being sold for 100,000. You know, I mean, of course, the prices themselves could tell you that there was a problem with this land because land in that area cannot be going for, so low a price. But I mean, Kenyans are desperate to own their homes.
Someone who needs land.
Yes.
Look, I think we keep talking about what should be done, and then, of course, we give rise to the ideal situation.
Yes.
The policy should prescribe 1, 2, 3. But then the thing is that what drives policy is persons. It's individuals.
Yes.
And that what drives a person to do something is the will to do it. And I'm hard pressed to see that this is not being done because there is no will, because there are few individuals who benefit from this situation being a mess. That in the mess of all of this, the clouds, the dust, the whatever, there are few individuals who continue to benefit in there being no order in this situation. And until we see it for what it is, we can be prescribing until the cows come home and it will never be done. And that's the thing. Until the bad mannerism is dealt with, until impunity and corruption is dealt with, we can be prescribing forever. We can talk about, yes, there should be a land policy and that there was historical behavior in this manner or the other. But at the end of the day, it's controlled by a few. Do you mean to tell me, Wakili, for example, that at the Ministry of Lands, where you will go as an individual today and you will see that your title exists in the system, and then before you know, you go back and it belongs to somebody else. You mean to tell me that the powers that be do not know that this is happening from everybody else? You mean to tell me that that national land policy, which should have been sorted out by now, is not being sorted out and people do not know? That an instruction cannot be given, can we sort this thing out and deal with it? Do you really think that it is a priority for the powers that be, again, that people are crying that one woman is about to lose another house in the span of 2 weeks? Because of a transaction gone bad? You mean to tell me that if there was interest in dealing with this thing, it would not have been sorted by now?
I think one is that it's a very difficult, indeed, situation, and there needs to be serious political will. And I think what our politicians need to understand is that there can be no serious development in any country where private land rights are not respected. That's number one. Number two, the security of tenure to land has to be guaranteed for any person to invest and continue investing in a country. Whether it is a citizen, a foreigner, anybody coming to your country must have certainty about land. Because land is a primary resource in any country.
That's true.
Now, you have a situation, and people may not associate this, but if you remember when President Uhuru brought the issue of riparian land, and buildings started going down. There were some that were, I think, in my view, were legitimately.
It started with the Kibaki government.
Yes, it's actually started with the Kibaki government for roads. But there were indeed some, like the one outside Westgate there, that building, the Nakumatt UK, where the Nakumatt UK used to be. I think that indeed should have come down, because that was clearly riparian. I mean, the water flows. In fact, after it was demolished, the flooding there stopped. So, I mean, some of them you can clearly see they had a lot of sense. But that uncertainty in many other areas then made the banking institutions to become very wary about lending using titles.
Yep.
Because they actually, and that is why that initiative was stopped, was because banks said they had 4,000 titles held as security that would have been affected by that action. The fallout economically would have been massive, because the minute some property is demolished and somebody had borrowed land on it, do you expect them to pay?
Well,
No,
Wambugu,
nothing.
does it then not point to partial treatment
Yes.
of certain institutions? Because banks are big and they have a loud voice, their matter is adhered to, because they are crying, they are kicking a fuss. By the way, there are parts of this country where if you have a title, it's just yours. You can't go with it to the bank.
That's your problem.
True.
Okay? So, if the banks didn't do due diligence and followed the law, and these guys are very strict on procedure and these things, are you telling me you could not employ people to find out that this particular title in this part is riparian land, and that they have legal minds, they have heads of legal, that they wouldn't know that this riparian land should actually not be built on? Now, they are protected.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
The government says, okay, guys, let's go easy on this. If we're going to give people free passes, for heaven's sake, why don't we just give the citizens of the country a free pass as well? They've made mistakes. They've been foolish. They've bought land they shouldn't buy. But then, the price they're paying, this is too steep. It's too steep a price to pay. Because you talk of commissions, Bwana Wambugu.
Yes.
You talk of the Njonjo Commission.
Yes.
What did the Ndegwa Commission usher in? That little clause.
Yes. Of
Yes.
public servants doing business.
Yes, not hindering public servants from doing business.
Yes.
The manifestation of what people interpreted it to mean.
Yes.
Here we are.
Correct.
We are sitting here expecting that government will take lead and will take action on land. Government is individuals. Those individuals, just by dint of the offices they occupy, will end up being the biggest beneficiaries of land fraud in this country. And they have always been. The government was not in the forefront in changing our land issues in the constitution. It was other institutions and other civil society agencies, actors, Father Gabriel Dolan and the others, and the Firimbis and
National Land Alliance.
National Land Alliance. Those were the ones that were taking the lead. Those voices are silent, and maybe those voices now should come back again and start talking about this. People like Davinda Lambert, they need to come up again and start pushing the issue of ensuring that our land policy, our land laws, our land management is proper.
Yes.
Otherwise, expecting... Did you see the people at Athi House the other day saying, well, you did a search at land office? No, it wasn't
Where?
here.
Yes.
No, it's not here.
Yes.
Maybe
And that's
we
a
went
whole
to a place
PS
where
and
it says
CS
land
saying,
office on the door.
no.
Yes.
Us? No, sorry.
No.
Yes.
They will never. Athi House is a criminal enterprise.
Crime
They
scene.
are not going to take charge of this matter the way you're saying.
Yes.
They will not.
It's not
They
in
will
their
only
interest.
do so if we apply pressure to them. Now, you are a seasoned lawyer with many years' experience in conveyancing. Join hands with the others.
Yes.
Take action.
Definitely. Yes.
But I'm not paying for it. People, thugs.
You think you're not?
No. You can't say, sasa hii kitu ni maji. No. The thugs who went to Portland,
Yes.
waende ndani na mali yao ichukuliwe.
Chukuliwe ilipe.
Ilipe.
Yeah.
Watu.
Yes.
Yeah, that's it. Where did the money go?
Yes.
Somebody
If they-
was paid.
If they collected $1 billion shillings from the people who purchased land, look for that $1 billion shillings. If you have to draw their blood and sell it, and their bone marrow on their teeth,
Yes.
sell it. Hapana. Ati now we are going to have a new levy here for land
to pay
compensation
back
levy.
people whose houses were demolished.
No. We must definitely. I think one we must definitely, of course, make it extremely an example of the people who sold land in Morocco. That is one, I think, action.
It's an opportunity that has arisen,
And that has arisen.
and it must be exploited to the fullest.
To the fullest.
Yes.
So that an example is set that you don't do that. Number two, I think we also need to have an active police department. Like that we have diplomatic police just for dealing with land issues. So that if a public
Which police?
No.
Which police?
You are doing okay.
John Wambugu is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. And he means well.
Well, we give him that.
Thank you very much, John, for joining us.
But do you see how the distrust we have in our institutions?
Why? Surely. Why do you think so?
At your police department for lunch.
Hey.
It's 8 a.m. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.